for a good time.
It's Darren
and Brittany,
and we're Eclectic Soul.
That's right.
If you will, before anything else, before you make another move or think another thought, like and subscribe below. I think it's maybe, is it on your side or is it on my side?
It's down there somewhere.
It's down
and
there.
it's very easy to find, I'll tell you that.
It's right below. First and foremost, the most important thing, next to the subject matter, take a look at Britt's fit. Isn't it cute?
Oh, that's so sweet of you.
Yeah, we want to, showcase the highlights and your fits are the highlights. So definitely, but a lot of times, we're even getting a little bit more of a kind of a full body thing here. A lot of times you just kind of see us from here up. So we wanted to change it up a little bit. All right. So today the subject matter is actually going to be just because we're in an interracial relationship does not mean that we do not have prejudices. Prejudices. So we just kind of wanted to touch on it, have a few takeaways, just talk about like things that we have personally dealt with, and that we face on a daily basis. We talked about the struggle of being in an interracial relationship and what we get from people outside, but what is it that we deal with internally. So, all right, you want to take it away?
Sure. So I think for me, I was brought up in a household where my dad and my mom were all about inclusivity and making sure that you really, don't just write someone off because they're different from you. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so then, I was raised in the suburbs for the majority of my life. And I went to a predominantly white school from from second grade. That was predominantly white, 3 black people in the whole school, in the whole elementary school. Okay, so that was crazy for me. And I dealt with a lot of racism there. And I just kind of let it roll off. I was young. I was in second grade, so I didn't know much of anything. But I'm going to tell you, when I finally started to notice for my own self, even at a young age, my best friend came to me. She was white. And she looked me in my eyes and she said, "My mom says that you cannot come to my party because you're a nigger." And I was clutching my invisible pearls. So yeah, she was like, "You can't come to my house because you can't come to my party because you're a nigger." And I cried and I cried and I cried. And I think from then on, just to be honest, to be completely real, I developed this very, very I was very defensive towards white people. Because my guidance counselor had to call her and everything. And she was like, "Oh, she didn't say that, she said this." And of course I believed it because I was in second grade. But now I was looking back on it when I got a little older and I was like, wait a minute now. That lady was a straight up racist. So I learned that, especially where I grew up, there were a lot of people around me that were racist, but they were pretentiously inclusive. And so what that caused me to do was to build up a lot of walls. And I wasn't, when I think of someone saying that they're racist, I had a conversation with somebody about this. Shout out to you, Marsha. She was just saying being racist is feeling like your nationality or your race is superior to another. Think of Klansmen, all right? But when she said, but prejudices is more so about the way you view a certain person. I can be prejudiced towards black people. And I think a lot of black people are prejudiced towards black people, just to be real. But I developed a lot of prejudices towards white people because of the experiences that I had as a young child. I was very vulnerable and I was still being formed at that time. And so I was trying to figure out who I was. And I was not fully accepted you know, so it caused me to question who I was, but also caused me to question these people that were supposed to be welcoming and loving towards me, but didn't want me around, and they're calling me derogatory terms, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And I truly believe that my best friend at the time, I believe that she really did love me. But she was young like me, you know, and that's why I think it's important that we don't teach kids to hate. It's important that we get kids acclimated to being around people that are different from them, because those prejudices and those racist tendencies develop within the home, because that's where they're formed, right? A lot of mine came from outside experiences, but my parents, you know, they were never like, oh, you can't hang around this person because of the color of their skin. But I started thinking, you know, well, dang, white people are insincere, you know. I wasn't thinking it was across the board, you know what I'm saying? But I was thinking, you know, well, dang, you know, a lot of people may pretend like they like me, but they may have a problem with me just because of the color of my skin. And I think I thought that would change when I got into an interracial relationship. But I think what it did actually was bring those things to the surface. You know, I realized that those things were there, because I think for a long time I kind of just suppressed it. And I think one of the things that's important is that we are honest and we own up to who we are. And say, every person in this world, I don't care how loving, how sweet you are, you may have some kind of prejudice. That does not mean that you're a racist. But what that does mean is you have to be very, very intentional about not buying into stereotypes, not allowing yourself to develop a hate for someone based on them having a different opinion from you, based on them looking different from you, having a different upbringing from you culturally, or just having a different color of skin. It's very, very important that we examine what it means. And I think that one of the reasons why God brought Darren and I together is to build bridges of unity. Yeah. Not just between black and white people, but between all sorts of different people all over the world. All cultures, yes. But I think that it's going to take us being honest with one another and being honest with ourselves about who we are and how we see people that are different from us. So that's something that I'm still consistently working on to this day, making sure that I'm not allowing myself to become resentful, specifically towards white people. And shout out to all those people out there that I know that are white, that are trying to make a difference, that have loved me, that have supported me. You know who you are. I could name a couple off the top of my head. Penny Manna, Mark Herndon, Bob Byerly and Mindy Byerly. And those are just a couple of people that come to mind, like just right off the flop. But there are others out there that have been completely and totally supportive of me and what I'm doing. But Darren and I have come up across a lot of people that like me, quote unquote, or love me, but are not comfortable with us being in a relationship. Right. Because of the way I look. And they can use every excuse in the book. It could be just their preference. It could be something that they supposedly read in the Word of God. And I have to work consistently. I'm just going to be honest. I have to work very consistently at not allowing myself to be jaded and upset because I feel like there's so much hypocrisy there. Because would you want someone not to be welcoming to you because you look different, you know? Right. So I have to make sure that I'm not allowing that situation with my best friend when I was in second grade to impact the way I feel even now when I'm not accepted by a certain group because of the color of my skin. It also has caused me to be extremely proud of who I am. I'm never apologetic for the things that I say because I know that it's coming from a good place, you know, and I really want people to understand that I do work to be welcoming and loving of all people, but it takes consistency and it takes intentionality not to allow my experiences to control the way I see the world, you know, and all black people are not the same, all white people are not the same. All Indians are not the same. All Asians are not the same. All Native Americans are not the same. All Mexicans are not the same. You name it. We're all different. But when we make blanketed like statements or we have these opinions about something and we have limited experiences, we're shutting ourselves off to so much. Yeah. And I'm trying to make sure that I don't do that myself. That I also don't take it out on Darren when I get frustrated about something that has happened just because he's white. So working on that prejudice thing. Yeah. And being in an interracial relationship is obviously not a cure-all. It is not. It is not. You know, coming up, there are a lot of things. Coming up, like, I guess, like you said, you went to a high school where it was predominantly white. You were like one of three
I went to a high school that was similar in a different city.
Oh, mine was elementary.
Oh, elementary, sorry.
Okay.
High school was that way, actually all the way up. It was like that for me. And you would have, someone that would come in that was either, black, Hispanic, whoever, they would come through. And I can remember even, like you have experiences, when you were younger, that kind of shaped how you saw things. But there were two specifically. I remember Spencer and Charity. Like, I remember befriending them and having lunch with them when I was first, second grade, and thinking they were really fun and like really cool, and they were like they were funny, and like I enjoyed being with them. And being a child, you're like, hey, this person's fun. I have a good time. But I can remember friends being like, they're dirty, don't talk to them, they're dirty,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's like, these are things that shape you as you grow, because then you start associating, and things that I would grow, I mean, I would be lying, and this is what's uncomfortable, a lot of times, when it comes to white people hate to talk about race. White people hate to talk about racism. They hate to face the fact that there's a possibility that you could be racist or you could be prejudiced, and a lot of things that I had to face with myself. Sorry, I'm fiddling with my glasses a lot, but part of the thing that I had to face about myself was, my biases, and I think my biggest thing where I probably failed, as being open-minded and like stereotyping a lot, would have to do with like humor, and very insensitive humor. And behind closed doors, what Dr. George Yancey would talk about is backstage racism. And he had a class that he challenged to go out and take note of backstage racism situations where people use the N-word in closed doors, behind closed doors, in a joke, and things like that. And that's where we get in trouble with justifying ourselves. It's like, yeah, sure, you're not marching in, Charlottesville, and being,
A tiki torch.
a tiki torch, and an open bigot, or like blessing someone else simply because they're black or anything like that. But what you really have to face about yourself is what are you doing internally? My thought processes, things that go through my mind, stereotypes. And this is something that your dad has said that I've taken to heart. He said, there are a lot of stereotypes, and there are people that live out those stereotypes. But he said, you take one person that does not meet that stereotype, it shatters the whole thing. So, like you were saying, you have to be careful with general and blanketed statements, because there's somebody out there that isn't like that, and so it nullifies your argument. It nullifies any sort of generalization that you have. It nullifies any sort of preconceived notion that you have about a certain person, specifically a certain culture, or people group. But I think my big thing is just my insensitivity, and that's something that we've continually had, things about empathy. Having empathy for people that are different from you, and how people, are very quick to share things on Facebook about animal abuse. Oh man, these dogs are being mistreated. Oh man, you see it all, like the Sarah McLachlan commercial. In the arms of an angel.
In the arms
and man,
of the angel.
People will give tons of money, for things like that, or they will share it. It'll get, 1 million shares or whatever it is on social media. But then, a black male is brutalized, by police, or he's murdered in cold blood and justified, where the officer, gets paid leave, and people don't take the time to share it. And I'm guilty of that. I'm guilty of it, but it's misguided priorities, in what we place. And me personally, something that I've found my humor to be off color, even to the point where, and it's funny because I went to a high school predominantly white. There were maybe 1 or 2 black people that went there. One of them ended up being my college roommate.
Hey, Justin.
Hey, Justin. Shout out to Justin McNair. But what ended up happening, we became roommates, and I believe it was so much more. There was a bigger purpose for it and a bigger reason, because it was an experience and an open door to expose me to a different culture, that was different from my own, and definitely different from the one that I grew up in. Because, growing up, I'm from Maryville, Tennessee, and Maryville, their mascot is the Rebels, so their flag that they tote is the Rebel flag. And a lot of controversy has come up, people have been like, this mural needs to be taken down and things like that. But it's all over, and it's a normal thing every single day, and we would make jokes of it, the people that were like open like racist, and use the N-word like liberally and out in the open, and they didn't care, and they were just out there. You would laugh about it, be like, ah ha ha ha, like, can you believe this guy? It's like, what kind of, backwards thinking person is that? But in the same token, you make off-color jokes. Maybe you drop the N-word behind closed doors. And I'm guilty of it. I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, I've never said that word in my life. I've said it, I'm sorry.
He never told me that.
Did I really?
No, you have never told me that.
I've said it. I've said it in jokes, like just really off-color jokes. And I said it one time to Justin, in a joking manner. And I saw...
How did he respond to that?
He just kind of let it roll off, and it was just and the thing was it was in, and I think a lot of it was because it was in a mixed crowd. It was him and 3 other white dudes. And so I feel like that goes on a lot, especially in corporate America. Things that are said, and a lot of times people just keep their mouths shut because one, it's well, it's just another day.
Yes.
And that's something that, I can't even begin to imagine what it's like to in a day in the life of a black man. I just the things that you take in, the things that you hear, the way people treat you. It's consistent and it's constant and it doesn't stop. You live in it every day, and I can't imagine that. So the thing is that may have just, especially with the high school that we went to, Justin's probably well, it's just another person from my high school. And since then he, of course, he's surrounded himself with a wonderful group of people, truly great group of people. But that's something that I really lament. And I looking back, my regret was saying it, but my other regret was not openly apologizing. I apologized to him when we were sitting there because I saw his reaction to it, and I felt an immediate conviction. That's the thing is a lot of times we just kind of brush things under the rug and be like, well, you know what, at least I'm not like that person. At least
I'm not putting on my sheet for the Klan rally.
Exactly. But you have to take responsibility, really for who you are. And yeah, you may not be putting on a sheet, you may not be going to a rally with a tiki torch, but you may be thinking incorrect thoughts. You may be using the N-word behind closed doors.
Or even in your mind.
And the thing is it's not right. There's a spectrum. We talked about, there were, somebody posted on Facebook a spectrum of racism where you have people that are bigoted and open, just derogatory people that hate mongers. And then you have this spectrum where it's people are well, I'm okay with being around people, but I don't want them in my family. And then you have this other people that's well, I'm great with sharing, with minorities and any person of color, but I need to leave. And then you have other people that are insincere, like you were saying, insincere. Hey, oh great, it's a pretentious inclusion. But in your mind, or the second that your child or, someone in your family, brings home someone that's a minority as their spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend, and then suddenly you have a problem, and you don't face yourself, you don't say, you know what, this is the reason that I have a problem with someone. Maybe you go to a church, and the leadership is black, well, maybe it's just not for me, It could be the best experience you've ever had in a church in your life, but, well, there's just something off. I'm having a hard time receiving or something like that. What you really have to look at yourself and say, I'm having a problem with this manager on my job, this pastor at this church. I'm having trouble with, this president-elect because of the color of their skin. And you've got to face that about yourself, because they may be doing an outstanding job, and the reason that you can't work well for them or with them is because they are different, and they are of a different race or a different culture, and you have to face that about yourself. I think it's very important to see that. So it's something that I've had to see, like reasons that I couldn't empathize with people, and you pointed that out to me a lot and be like, well, I see you're very empathetic towards this person, and this person, you feel sorry for this person, and they're white. Why do you have a hard time empathizing with this person or
me
or her? Yes, and I've been insensitive, and it's taken me time and time again, and not just time like chronological time. It's taken me time and time again to fail, and be like, you know what, I didn't get that right. Once again, I didn't get it right, and I can't tell you how many times that I've just stumbled and faltered, and Britt's been incredibly patient with me, and that's something that I would have to say, if you are in an interracial relationship, specifically if you're white, be sensitive to the person that you're in the relationship with, because they may not even. And Britt's really good about being open and honest, and this is how I feel, and this is how I feel. Not everybody's like that, and I've been very blessed to have someone who is open like that. But you may have someone who just bottles it up, harbors it, and just be like, oh no, that's okay, it's okay, or they don't say anything at all. But really do what you can. As Dr. George Yancey says, he's like, you've got to risk your white self. You've got to risk rejection from friends, from family, from people, on your workplace, by stepping out and defending people, when you say people are making off-color jokes at work, be like, you know what, that's not right, and you may not have a one black person in your life, that's close to you, or anything like that, or maybe you do have somebody in your life that's a minority. You got to stand up for them, because they can't. It's more difficult for them to defend themselves and not get backlash, not be labeled as the angry black man or the angry black woman, or the person that can't get past. Oh, we've made so much progress, and I'm not saying that we haven't made moves in the right direction, but we're not as far along as we think. As a society, as a culture, it's not where it needs to be, and some of you may not believe, and some of you may be like, well, that's a little extreme. It's really not extreme. It's still existing today. People label it as, well, I don't see color, I'm colorblind, or anything like that. That's not true. You're fooling yourself if you say that. You're truly just lying to yourself. Point blank to the period. Everybody sees colors. Everybody sees differences. Everybody sees those differences in culture in people. And the thing is we just have to be the same across the board, And it's a challenge, man.
It is.
Relationships are hard, but man, add the interracial, dynamic to it. It makes it even more complicated. But it's for good reason. It's for good purpose. And that's the reason we do what we do. That's the reason we get on here and we talk about these uncomfortable things, and we're vulnerable. You think I want to sit and be like, hey, I've been real insensitive and had bad thoughts, and I've used the N-word before in my life.
I'm prejudiced.
It doesn't feel good. And we had a conversation about this. I don't think anybody is really chomping at the bit to have these uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah.
But, they need to be had. For true change to happen, the conversation needs to be had, and then the action needs to be taken.
Yeah.
You can sit and talk, and you can wave your hands up in the air. This is an outrage, But if you're not taking the action to make a change, then it's just what does it you say? It's just rhetoric.
It's just rhetoric.
It's just rhetoric. Exactly. You're just talking about it, and then behind closed doors, you're still using the language. You're not standing up for people that you see in a grocery store, or you see in a department store, and they're being trailed by the security guard because they're black, because they think. That's another thing. I used to work for a manager, and he would trail any black person that came in.
all black people are not thieves.
No way.
Just like all white people are not thieves, and all white people are not racist. You know.
Right. So, you know, we don't want to make any blanketed statements.
No.
We're just saying these are things that we've encountered, and we appreciate you
us.
watching. Yeah, and
We
we hope
do.
that you take. We hope that you take from it, you know, and you grow. You know, we want people to grow.
Learn from our mistakes.
Thank you, thank you.
We're being honest about what we've done wrong, you know, because we want you guys to. It's better when you can learn from someone else's mistakes, and this world is so much better. Like when you just open yourself up to people that are not like you, because you meet so many awesome people, and that's why I'm so glad that we have music.
Yes, because it's what brought us together,
And it breaks down walls of disunity.
It does. It does. Go to a concert, like, and you get every kind of people. You know,
Sports do that too.
Sports do it too. They do. But the second, you know, somebody takes a knee in protest, man, you get people fired up. And we'll have a video about that too. I think we need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing. And
It's an adventure.
It is, and I'm grateful for it.
Me too.
It's hard as hell.
It is.
I'm grateful for it. To the fire,
It is.
to the limit. Whew. Oh man, I'm kind of sweating a little bit.
You're all red.
It's like ah. But yeah, it's good. It's good to have these conversations. It's good to talk about this. But
Yeah.
we love you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll have more music to come. We've been saying that for some time, but we're getting it together.
But for real though.
Oh man.
All right. Love y'all.
Have a great time.
Bye. I love you. I love this guy.
Oh man, I love this girl.
Risking his
This
white
woman.
self.
This woman. She's not a girl. She's a woman. She's about to be 25.
I'm not about to be 25. Bye guys. Love you.
Bye.
Peace.